Well, we have made it to summer, and now that I have plenty of free time, it's given me many opportunities to work on my layout and reflect on my model train details. One major part of this being weathering freight cars to give them a run-down, hard-working appearance. You can buy some rail cars pre-weathered, but not always, and it normally costs extra. And although many weathering methods have been around for a long time, I've never really tried it out for myself. But since I had some spare brushes, acrylic paint, and free time, I figured I'd give it a shot. So watch as I learn and attempt to give my rolling stock a coat of realism. I decided to do the dry brush method with all of my weathering as that's what I had the most materials for and that seemed like the easiest to start out with. And my palette consisted of dark tan, wood, neutral gray, and chrome yellow. I used all of these colors to some degree, but I found that dark tan and wood worked well for dirt and rust. I started out with some basic ready-to-run cars to get the hang of dry brushing before moving on to the higher-end rolling stock. My first major weathering job was on a kit-built Boston and Maine hopper by Cotto. In hindsight, maybe I should have waited before tackling such a massive amount of weathering, but it's not too bad. I even tried to paint the trucks, and maybe someday I'll get to the other side of it. Just like with my HO scale cars, I am also beginning to weather a few of my O scale cars, starting off with this Weaver Amtrak boxcar. I guess some of you might want to see this process live, and so I will sort of document it. I've already gotten the side and the trucks a little bit weathered, and so now I'm just going to weather the top a little bit. So basically, how this dry brushing works is I have my brush, I have a paper towel, I have my dark tan paint, so I dip the brush into the paint. I sort of just kind of streak it onto the paper towel so there's not too much. And then I just kind of swipe onto the roof of the car so that a little bit of the paint just comes off. I do try to be careful with this, just to not have too much, though O scale I think is more forgiving than HO because you're dealing with a lot more space. Though this might be a good time to mention, kids, if any of you are watching, please do not try this at home with your little ready-to-run trains. Because once upon a time, I was in your shoes, I looked at videos of this, I thought it was really cool, and so I tried it on my models, and then I had many regrets. So either get permission from your parent or guardian, or just do this when you're older and you have a bit of a better idea of what you're doing. So yeah, that's pretty much a little PSA. You can kind of see how now the roof is starting to look more sort of messed up, which is what I'm kind of going for. I chose an Amtrak box car because, I mean, Amtrak material handling cars still roam the railroads. I've actually seen one, but they're usually pretty worn. I mean, they are over 20 years old. So, yeah, just trying to make it seem like it is over 20 years old. So it's clear that my weathering skills are a work in progress, and a lot of the books I read said that it comes with experience anyway. But while weathering is a good strategy for model railroad realism, not every car has undergone years of rust and smoke, a heater broke, and a door that flew away. Some cars are still new, or at least haven't yet been caked with years of the elements. But one trait that's shared by almost all American rail cars are reflectors, those yellow or white stripes you see on the side. As we all know, trains are easily visible during the day, but that's not always the case at night or in bad weather, which can be dangerous, especially at railroad crossings. So to help keep a train visible at all times of day, reflectors of various kinds are used to reflect incoming light, indicating the train's presence. Similar to weathering, some models come with reflectors included, but others do not. So alongside the weathering project, I figured I'd try my hand at making some reflectors of my own. I know there's plenty of available decals for this, but I preferred making mine from scratch, as it wouldn't cost me anything, and I wouldn't procrastinate the summer away on ordering some. The source for all my reflectors would be some math worksheets I had left over. The color was fairly close to the prototype, and now that I was done with school, they had a newfound purpose. Using a tape measure and some existing reflectors, I got some dimensions to use for making my own. I used a pencil to mark out the length, cut them out with scissors, and stuck them onto the car with a glue stick. I looked at a lot of real cars for reference, as I wanted to be fairly close, but I figured it was alright that I was a little off sometimes, as the real ones are not always consistent either. For covered hoppers, which were the first cars I did this on, it's fairly straightforward, as most hoppers have vertical reflectors on the side grills. But some cars can be more of a challenge. Tank car reflectors, for instance, are curved when glued on the side, and they don't always have the same positioning. Boxcars can have different reflector designs as well, which can be either vertical like the hoppers, or horizontally on the bottom of the frame. These can also depend on the size and variant of the car, but the good part about all this is that it gives a lot of options and makes it so that you don't have to be spot on every time. The catch is that, if you want to try cutting these out, be razor thin. My first few tries were not too bad, but I ended up thinning out several of them and going back to do so, as they can easily look too big. This whole operation has made me consider investing in some tweezers, as it's some quite delicate modeling work. But it pays off, as once the reflectors are installed, they actually don't look too bad. And some of you might be asking, do they actually reflect light? Well, sort of. I have tested this, and while it kind of reflects light, so does the rest of the car. So it doesn't entirely work, but it is fairly close, and I'm not too worried about if it works or not. I'm more so just concerned on if it's there at all. So it's not a big deal, and you can still tell that they're present, and they stand out as they're supposed to. So it works. So as you can guess, this is a process that I'll likely continue on more of my rolling stock over time, including the O-scale cars as you have already seen. Now, even though I have documented my weathering process, I will say that I don't think I'm the best guide if you're wanting to get into weathering. There are many more sources than me, as I am still just a novice in this. But if you do want to build your own reflectors from scratch, I will provide dimensions for that in the description using what I have done so far. It has worked fairly well, so I hope it'll work all right for you. And so this is going to be just an ongoing process that I will gradually put on more of my cars. And I've even begun to experiment with other rolling stocks, such as my auto rack, and I've even gotten some more acrylic paint and brushes, so I can do different types of weathering in that area as well. And of course, I have other modeling projects lined up for this summer as well. We'll see how those go, but I'll just keep doing the weathering and the reflectors just over time, just a gradual kind of process that'll just keep going, you know. But it's been an interesting little project so far. It has made me look a lot closer at the rail cars that I see, and has made me just a little bit better at scale model making along the way. So, thank you for watching. I hope this was at least a little bit helpful, and God bless.